people ask about the possible outcome of the Lil Durk case, the honest answer is this: there is no single ending. There are several realistic paths this case can take, and which one happens depends on evidence, co-defendants, and decisions made behind closed doors long before a jury ever speaks. Today, we're breaking down those possible outcomes, not rumors, not social media takes, but how federal cases like this usually play out. Let's start with the reality of federal court. Federal prosecutors do not bring cases like this unless they believe they can win. Their conviction rate is extremely high. That doesn't mean guilt is automatic, but it does mean every move is calculated, slow, and strategic. Now let's walk through the most realistic scenarios. First, the worst case scenario. If Lil Durk goes to trial and prosecutors prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, the result would be a conviction on the most serious charges. In federal court, a murder for hire conviction can lead to life in prison. There is no parole in the federal system. That means once a sentence is handed down, it is served almost entirely. This outcome becomes more likely if prosecutors successfully introduce strong digital evidence such as phone records, surveillance messages, or financial trails. It also becomes more likely if co-defendants cooperate and testify. In many federal cases, the strongest weapon isn't physical evidence, it's testimony from people inside the conspiracy. That's the worst case outcome. Life or decades that function as life. Now let's talk about a more common scenario, partial conviction. This happens often in complex cases. A jury may not fully agree on every charge. They may reject the murder for hire allegation, but still convict on conspiracy, weapons, or related federal charges. In that situation, the sentence could still be extremely serious. If 15 years, 20 years, and 30 years or more. This usually happens when jurors feel something illegal happened, but they're not convinced about intent at the highest level. From a defense standpoint, this is still devastating. From a legal standpoint, it's considered a partial win compared to life. Now let's talk about the outcome that happens more often than most people realize: a plea deal. The majority of federal cases never go to trial. They end quietly with negotiated pleas. If prosecutors believe they can secure a conviction, but want to avoid risk, and if the defense believes trial carries too much danger, both sides may agree to a deal. That deal usually involves pleading guilty to reduce charges. In exchange, prosecutors drop the most severe counts. Even then, the sentence can still be heavy: 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. But the key difference is certainty. No jury, no life sentence gamble, no public spectacle. This option becomes more likely as trial approaches and as co-defendant situations become clearer. If others cooperate, pressure increases. Now let's talk about the rarest outcome: acquittal. This would mean a jury finds reasonable doubt and clears Lil Durk of the charges and he would walk free, legally cleared. But this is statistically uncommon in federal cases. For this to happen, prosecutors would need weak evidence, unreliable witnesses, or serious contradictions in their narrative. The defense would need to successfully dismantle the conspiracy theory. It's not impossible, but it is difficult. Another outcome, though less discussed, is a weakened case. And this happens when evidence is ruled inadmissible, witnesses fall apart, or prosecutors reassess their strategy. In these situations, charges may be reduced or reshaped. Sometimes cases don't collapse, they shrink. This often leads back to a plea deal, but on more favorable terms for the defense. Now let's talk about what actually decides which path this case follows. The most important factor is co-defendants. If federal cases are built in layers, lower level defendants face pressure first. If one cooperates, that changes everything. Another key factor is digital evidence. Modern cases rely heavily on phones, location data, messages, call logs. The clearer that digital trail is, the stronger the government's case becomes. Another factor is pretrial rulings. What evidence the jury is allowed to see can change everything. If key pieces are excluded, prosecutors lose leverage. And finally, perception. This case is high profile. Juror psychology matters. And that's why prosecutors are pushing for measures like an anonymous jury. They want control over the environment. Now, let's be honest. Right now, the most realistic outcomes are not extremes. The most likely paths are a plea deal or a partial conviction. Those are the outcomes federal history supports. Anything else depends on evidence we haven't seen yet. What's important to understand is this: the legal system moves slower than public opinion. Decisions that shape this case may already be happening quietly. Negotiations, strategy shifts, pressure behind the scenes. By the time headlines announce an outcome, it's usually been decided long before. This case is not about headlines, it's about leverage. And leverage decides outcomes. No matter how this ends, the impact will be permanent, legally, professionally, culturally. The next major turning points will be co-defendant decisions, pretrial rulings, and whether this case ever reaches a jury. Until then, everything else is noise. Make sure you support the channel, like, share, and subscribe.